The item of discussion last evening that consumed 95% of the meeting was the initial discussion of the proposed JMZO amendment, the E-25 use. As a little background, this is a draft that was prepared through the auspices of Newtown Township to address a new use within the jointure that combines the convenience store use and motor vehicle fueling, gas station use, without the component of service attached to a gas station. There's been some pressure in the county and the jointure for this use to be included in our ordinance. And it was determined more than a year ago that maybe the township should be more forthcoming in putting together the concepts and parameters of what would be acceptable if this use is to come to the jointure. And we did have member participation as well as residents in the audience. And we explained that this is something that it has to fit all three municipalities, and they all have to agree that this is a beneficial use. It also has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, which is under reevaluation for 2020. We did review the preliminary draft as proposed for the E-25 motor vehicle fueling station and convenience store use. There are some items in question, including the discussion points among the commission members, was the necessity of including eat-in dining on a limited basis, 24-hour operation, the size of the building, which will be revisited, all of these issues at our next meeting. And I think some of the members that came from the community in the audience thought that, a decision was going to be made last night. We tried to explain that this is a process that we have filed as benefit of the township, a curative amendment, which means that we have 9 months to forestall any further applications for this convenience store / E-25 use. But in that 9 months, the jointure has to come up with a consensus and an agreement that we either create it in all three municipalities, or 2 of the 3, or 1 of the 3. And as a result, we try to explain to the residents in the discussion that there'll be many more opportunities for their involvement in this discussion. I'm sure it'll be a topic that will come before you in the coming months, and the Commission has pledged to continue to work and try and build a consensus. As you're aware, when this first came up in 2018 with Mr. Van Louvenay, the Commission said, "No way, Jose," and their suggestion of what was appropriate for this use didn't seem consistent with the planning minds that were on the board at the time. Therefore, we recommended, and the township did take the opportunity to bring a group of people together to come up with something that would work in Newtown Township, Wrightstown, and Upper Makefield. The jury is still out as to whether that has been created, but we've made the first step. And I think that the Commission has determined to place this on the agendas wherever time permits. It will be advertised as a discussion item under old business and as a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. The suggestion was made with the consensus of Michelle Fountain that maybe this is time to let the planning commissions of our sister townships in the jointure start to do their review process. So in the end of the day, we have 3 planning commissions and 3 townships build a consensus that can best protect the township in the future. This is not going to be a fun year in terms of this issue. It's very controversial, it's very impassioned, but I think the purpose that you've explained and the Jointure partners want is the best protection we can have against future challenges to the validity of our zoning ordinance. So that concludes my rather lengthy description of what took place last night. It was basically the only agenda item we had, but we did have a lengthy discussion, and the same passions that existed in 2018 were demonstrated in the commission last evening. So wish you all well, and if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Fidler?
Mr. Fidler, so the Planning Commission isn't done making a recommendation or no on this ordinance yet. You did mention maybe recommending that it be sent to the other 2 planning commissions. That was not a formal motion.
No, it was not. This was just a discussion point at the conclusion of our meeting, and our group said, well, why should we be the only ones that are doing the grunt work? Well, why not share the opportunity for the other planning commissions to take a look at this and see what they can agree to? And I think it's important that the inclusion that the township provided in this draft addresses various street classifications, locations, area dimensional requirements in terms of total acreage. But if this is an ordinance is adopted by the Jointure, all the land development for any of those potential future uses that need zoning relief because the site may not fit or the road classification isn't quite what we anticipate it should be, has a purview to go to their zoning hearing board to seek the relief that would allow them to achieve their end game. So I think the process is a very valid one to include our Jointure partners, and I think our commission is very adamant that this just doesn't go in Newtown Township. If this lives, it shared with our Jointure partners, and that's my assessment, my only personal opinion, but if we're a Jointure, we provide for the benefits for our citizens in all 3 municipalities. So get off my soapbox and
well, that's fine. I appreciate that. But there's no formal recommendation that happen yet. The Planning Commission wants at least another shot at it themselves, the Newtown Planning Commission, and as part of their recommendation, it may be after their next meeting, after their 2 meetings from now, whenever, would be to send it to the other municipalities.
And again, there was no formal recommendation, but we felt that, the clock is ticking on 9 months. Why not, if this is the draft that is ultimately going to be reviewed by everybody with maybe a few tweaks, I guess it's, when the legal parlance is substantive changes or something like that. If there's no substantive changes, it doesn't have to be started all over. But again, we were just trying on a practical side to say, let's get as much involvement early on so we get to the end game before the 9 months is up.
Thank you. We're down to 8 months, by the way.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Well, December 11th, so you know that date.
Okay, yes.
It seems like a long time, but it'll be here.
Oh, it'll fly by.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.